with Mark Kimmitt in Washington, D.C. He's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs. General Kimmitt, Germany is sending Ukraine anti-aircraft defense systems, and the U.S. will provide medium-range rocket systems and ammunition. What I'm wondering is these are all sophisticated weaponry that's being sent to Ukraine. How long would it take to be trained on these systems? Is it a week? Is it a matter of months or potentially longer? And if so, is that an indication that the West is preparing this to be a long, drawn-out war?
Well, those are two different questions. On the first question, I think that we will see both the anti-aircraft and the rocket systems on the battlefield with trained Ukrainians by the end of July. Obviously, we have to get not only the rocket systems from the United States, but also those same rocket systems from Great Britain over there. So there will be some time transportation challenges, but you'll also need to get the Ukrainian troops trained up in them in a third country. But I think it's reasonable to expect that they'll be in battle by the end of June.
And do you think that the West is preparing for this to be a long-term conflict?
Absolutely. On both sides, there does not appear to be an offensive capability sufficient to break through the lines and achieve strategic objectives. The Russians seem to be digging in, although they are making some offensive moves in the north. The Ukrainians are continue to defend. You see the terrain and the changes in locations change very, very little. So unless there's a negotiated peace or there's a frozen conflict, I think this is going to be a very long conflict.
We keep hearing the term game changer thrown around when talking about the weapons that are being supplied to Ukraine. But are any of these really enough to turn the tide in favor of Ukraine?
Yeah, you've never heard the term game changer from me. I don't think any of these systems that have been introduced are going to make a significance on the ground. And that's one of the criticisms that NATO is providing Ukraine enough to fight, but not enough to win. Certainly the missiles, the air defense weapon systems, the tanks being donated, very, very helpful to the Ukrainians to defend, but certainly not enough to make any significant breakthroughs or achieve any level of victory on a military basis.
You talked about the need for diplomacy as a way to bring about the end to this war. Where do you see a possible opportunity for that to open up? What needs to happen to get Putin and Zelensky to come face to face to discuss a possible ceasefire?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that very few people come to the negotiating tables if they think they're winning, and also they're not too worried if they're losing. But in this case, I think both sides would have to realize that the costs involved are worse than sitting down at the negotiating table. In the case of the Russians, obviously there is starting to be significant public outcry against the war. And for the Ukrainians, the terrible losses may force Zelensky to simply say, I can't let my people die anymore. I need to negotiate a peace. So I think only when both sides think they're losing and there's nothing to be gained by further military operations will they change their operations from the battlefield to the negotiating table.
All right, Mark Kimmitt joining us from Washington. Thank you for your time.